Welcome to the 616 O'Clock News with your hosts, Philip Kingston John, aka the Comic Book Curmudgeon, and...
Tread on your cues. And Ian James Wood, aka Jessica Jones.
So yes, you might have listened to our previous episode, which was talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and Logan. That was the first part of our review of the year, and now we're on to...
our second episode of our review of 2017, which is Wonder Woman. Obviously, in our first season of the show, you talked about your love of Wonder Woman.
Indeed,
you drew
I
a
love
picture of Wonder Woman.
Yes.
We even got a tweet back from the illustrator of the run of Wonder Woman, which you talked about.
Cliff Chang, indeed.
Indeed. So, obviously, I know you're a much bigger fan of the character than I perhaps am. So, what were your feelings?
Okay, well, I thought that Gal Gadot was all right. I thought she was fine in BVS. I think she was one of the better things about BVS. She had a certain amount of charm to her, and athleticism. She pulled off the physical scenes.
For somebody whose primary job it is as a model to just walk and wear clothes, she did more than that. She did more than walk and wear clothes. She said words. So, no, that is a positive that can be drawn upon. Yeah.
It's funny that we've both gone... Well, I've gone searching for a positive to start with, because you were just saying, is it possible to criticise Wonder Woman in this day and age?
Given the election result in the States of last year, given the kind of, escalation of kind of alt-right politics... I can see why championing Wonder Woman for what it represents is a wonderful thing. And the fact that, obviously Patty Jenkins for the sequel is getting paid what a man would, which you'd expect but wouldn't necessarily have traditionally been the case, is amazing and fantastic and breaking the glass ceiling. And that's all fantastic and great.
Yes, but I don't want any female directors directing films about non-females.
No, obviously.
No,
God, no.
That must never happen.
I mean, to be honest, when S.J. Clarkson directed the first couple of episodes of Defenders, it sickened me to my core.
Yes,
I was outraged. I was like, I know there's women in it, but goddamn, there's men in it too, for God's sake. Yeah. I said, obviously, with men being in it, given that the predominant cast of Wonder Woman, other than Gal Gadot, after the first 15 minutes, is a bunch of dudes.
I know. So, okay, let's get into it. My feelings of disappointment, this whole idea that there's a rich cornucopia of female characters is just bollocks. All of the Amazons were basically had exactly the same personality.
Indeed.
They were all like stern warriors. That was just it.
Well, with maybe the exception of Robin Wright, who was a little less stern.
Right.
She's the less stern one. Ridiculous. And then the fact that they're these strong, empowered women, this island strong power, they can be easily killed by faceless, machine gun wielding Germans.
I did think that fight sequence was quite good, though.
Nicely choreographed.
It was nicely choreographed, nicely shot.
Yeah, really nicely shot. There was some iconic imagery there, and the location just on the beach, it was bright.
Yeah,
it was good.
But it did connect with what I thought was just an absolutely huge plot hole. Is that Themyscira is supposedly protected by magic or whatever from ever being discovered. What happened?
They passed through some clouds. In a day and age where people were travelling on boats, though, when Zeus would have created this magic, they might have thought, I don't want to go anywhere near these clouds, and could have veered off in their boats.
But the suggestion is it's never been discovered since.
Yeah, indeed, in the next 100 years. Which is weird with all the proliferation of satellites and, maybe the magic clouds. Just cover it on the satellites and stuff, but, with airplanes and, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Other things.
And then as the film progressed, as soon as David Thewlis was introduced, I leant over and said to the person who was watching the film with me, I bet he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
And then he was. It seemed so obvious. I mean, just by casting David Thewlis. And if we can just jump into Ares for a moment, I felt kind of quite conflicted about him. Actually, I didn't feel conflicted at all. I thought it was shit. In the comic books, his relationship with Diana is so rich and interesting, and the fact that in the New 52 there's the idea that Ares actually trained Wonder Woman, and they had this background as a mentor and pupil, which gives a whole new dimension to their antagonist, and they're much more like frenemies, I think, in the comic books. It's like an ongoing antagonist, sometimes begrudging ally kind of relationship, rather than he's the bad guy, therefore we must kill him. That is the extent of his kind of role.
Yeah.
And then the whole reveal of Ares at the end. I mean, for a moment, there was actually a moment when I thought, maybe they're not going to do the obvious thing. Maybe, because it seemed like when she killed the German guy, and then she realised that wasn't Ares. It was like, maybe the message is that it's not a simple, you can't just kill the god of war. War is an aspect integral to society and civilization.
And humanity.
And I thought, that's actually really clever and really interesting. And oh no,
I know,
there is a God of War,
well,
it just wasn't him.
it just
And
wasn't
also,
Danny Houston,
you
who
could
was
kill the
wasted.
God of War, but it
But it
didn't stop war.
Doesn't stop anything. Doesn't do shit. But yeah, Patty Jenkins getting paid the same as a man to direct the obviously women that are amazing.
A female creator, not female writer or
Brett Ratner produced it, kids. Yeah. Fuck her, so she knows she's a lesbian. Brett Ratner, which is what he said to Ellen Page, a young Ellen Page on the set of X-Men 3. Brett Ratner produced those movies. They were written by Zack Snyder, Jeff Johns, and another male writer.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
Whilst it has been seen very much as, and it's been effectively virally advertised as a watershed, and it is frankly a watershed moment for women as well, because what it has done for Patty Jenkins' career is phenomenal.
For Wonder Woman's career. And I guess it's good that Gal Gadot has got this star power now, and that she's wielded it in a morally responsible way and kind of forced them to get rid of Rat Pack.
Indeed.
Yeah,
they were producers of Justice League and BVS as well.
So what else about Wonder Woman? The vaunted No Man's Land sequence, did that work for you?
It's exactly the same no man's kind of reference as you got in Lord of the Rings, which was released in, 52 years ago, the book, and the film was released almost 15 years ago. The character who says that, whose name I can't remember, but Galadriel? No, that's not right. Eowyn or Erwin. It's one of them. So, and she goes, I am no man. If she then, launched her sword at that fucking Nazgul and missed, and then a bunch of guys had to come in and stab that Nazgul to save her life, that would be the effective version of what Wonder Woman did. She's in no man's land. Then she gets pinned down by enemy fire and has to be saved by a bunch of men.
I'm not sure exactly what it was saying. And I felt this with Captain America, the First Avenger as well. I'm not sure what it's actually saying to kind of trivialise, in that case, World War II in this way.
Yeah.
But in terms of iconography, her in No Man's Land with the bullets bouncing off her shield or whatever, I thought that looked cool. But I totally get your point that then it needed to be saved.
Yeah.
And then it got into this whole overblown action sequence with the most horrible CGI rubber stunt doubles.
I've heard that apparently Patty Jenkins, it was something that she was insisted was in the film, but a lot of the producers, male producers, didn't necessarily see the value in. Hence why perhaps it looks cheap as fuck, because it's just Gal against a backdrop.
Okay.
And that's even before we get into that action sequence where she saves that town of people that then die in the gas in, which, so effectively she saved no one because her reckless actions leads to their death. Yeah. But again, women are wonderful. Patty Jenkins deserves every success she's had. And not all people who criticise Wonder Woman are necessarily outright crypto-fascist misogynists.
Right, and what a perfect place to end our review of Wonder Woman. Well, the next big superhero movie release of the year was one of your favourites.
I think we're going from obviously one of your favourite characters, Wonder Woman, to one of my favourite characters, Spider-Man. Whilst obviously you felt a certain level of disdain for perhaps the movie you were presented with as a fan. Spider-Man Homecoming for me was everything I ever wanted from a Spider-Man movie and everything I never knew I wanted from a Spider-Man movie coming together in perfect harmony.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it.
The best 2 hours and 12 minutes I've spent in the cinema this year. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
But not Amazing Spider-Man.
Not Amazing Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield. Obviously, after the disappointments of Amazing Spider-Man, both 1 and 2, where Sony just really didn't know what they were doing, that was clear. Amazing Spider-Man was an attempt to Nolanise the Spider-Verse in a year in which Avengers released, and so Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out. It was a reaction to Avengers where they clearly didn't grasp what people liked about the Avengers. They were like, oh yeah, Avengers was bright and colourful, let's make Amazing Spider-Man 2 bright and colourful and fucking hammy villains and shit. Yeah, because they clearly hate their audience. Then you look back at the Raimi movies and I liked Spider-Man.
Sure.
Because there was enough Spider-Man in it that, I could relate to and enjoy. I loved Spider-Man 2 with a passion. And Spider-Man 3 had that maitre d' sequence in with Bruce Campbell, I'm French, which frankly is one of the most wonderful things that's ever been committed to film. Sadly, the rest of the film can't live up to that singular moment. There was another moment in Spider-Man 3 where we're talking about being good.
I thought some of the FX work on Sandman was good.
Oh yeah, actually that moment where Sandman's kind of born and he's kind of tumbling to be born and it's got that kind of lovely piano score.
Yeah, it was really creepy.
Yeah, man, that was really nice. So Spider-Man 3 is not irredeemable. It's not Suicide Squad. It's not.
And it still had enough of that relationship between James Franco and Tobey Maguire, that had carried on, and I think you really felt the heart in their friendship.
Yeah.
And it was kind of had that real poignancy when he suffered from amnesia and they were back in that mode, but you knew that obviously Tobey Maguire knew
everything that had happened. Yeah. Spider-Man 3, not a complete write-off, but a mess of like completely paced.
And I mean, it's been well documented how much Raimi's vision was compromised. He was forced to include the Venom character when he didn't want to. And yada yada yada. But that's not what we're talking about.
We're talking about Spider-Man Homecoming, and what a homecoming it was. Let's face it, Marvel Studios got the rights back to Spidey. I was overjoyed.
It's a very meta title, isn't it?
Well, there's lots of meta elements to it, you know. From the, kind of running through the gardens, great movie, but he sees Ferris Bueller on the screen and stuff, to obviously Michael Keaton's casting as Birdman the Vulture.
Let's just park Keaton for a moment and talk about Spider-Man himself.
Tom Holland, yeah.
I mean, he was great, wasn't he?
Phenomenal. I mean, he was great in Civil War, obviously he had a very small role, but memorable role in that movie.
And then I think it really worked, like the casting of Spider-Man as a millennial teenager.
Indeed.
And the way that he kind of used his technology and stuff to document his adventures. That was cool.
A film by Peter Parker, all that stuff. And that being kind of like an allusion to Peter Parker's photographer past.
Sure, yeah.
But also kind of updating it for a new audience. Having Spider-Man enter the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a young man, just as the character did back in, 1963, into the Marvel Universe. This unique perspective from a teenager, and so having that's felt perfectly in keeping. Even when Brian Michael Bendis, kind of redid the character for Ultimate Spider-Man, he did him again as a high school teen. You know? And that's a period of time with Spidey that we've only spent, like, say, a little bit of the first movie with, and all of Amazing Spider-Man, but it never really affected his day-to-day.
And he never really sold it, because it was played by a
man
guy
in his 30s.
Yeah, exactly.
Much before release, they talked about it being a John Hughes Spider-Man movie.
Yes.
And John Watts did such a phenomenal job with that in terms of getting that young cast together, getting them to interact, getting them to become friends, so that friendship translated beautifully on screen.
Yeah, it was a nice gang, ethnically diverse, with all the main characters being white. So,
I don't know, man. Like, Ned obviously is Asian, and it felt ethnically diverse, but in a very naturalistic way.
I think it was a no-win situation, really, in that respect. But no, I think they did fine with it. And the guy, I'm afraid I can't remember his name. The American Indian, not American Indian, Indian American.
Oh, what, the kid who plays Flash Thompson?
Yeah. He's fucking great. I love him.
Fucking great.
He's in Budapest Hotel.
Grand Budapest Hotel.
Hotel. He's fucking brilliant.
He is amazing. Peanut. When I say penis, you say Parker. Peanut. And I love the little moments with Flash. Like, you can't just come back here and expect to be like welcomed with open arms. And then Martin Starr, the teacher, sees him. Oh, welcome back, Pete, and all that stuff. Like, lovely, like wonderful. Like, such a great sense of humour to that movie. But then also a real sense of the feels as well, you know? And we talk about Tom Holland's performance and it being so kind of like hyperverbal and hyperactive, which he is, for a lot of it, like, because he's so overwhelmed and excited by what's going on, much like I was when I saw the film. But then when he does have those moments where he's talking to Ned, and like Ned's like, oh, well, did it hurt? When the spider bit me, did it hurt? Can I have the spider bite me? Oh, actually, I don't know. I don't know if I want that. I mean, like, and then he just, the spider's dead, Ned. And like having to underpin things, and it's always kind of like, yeah, man. And so that was great. And his performance was across the board. Like the moment where he's, the Spider-Man lifts heavy things moment, which has to be in like every film basically, because that's what Spider-Man's all about. It's about
heavy things,
lifting heavy things, metaphorically and literally. It's about will. Spider-Man he will never give up. And that moment where he's trapped, he's crying. We've seen him rescued by Tony Stark earlier in the movie, and it's almost like that expectation that he needs somebody to help him get out of the situation. But then through sheer force of fucking will, and a lovely little image of the spider mask and half his face, which we all know from the comics, and then he lifts up that heavy shit. The feels. Man, I loved Spider-Man Home. As a Spider-Man fan,
I can tell.
This is the Spider-Man film I've waited. Like, after seeing, even going in to see, say, 2002 Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And I'm so used to Spidey from the comics and the cartoons, his expressive eyes and all that stuff. And then you get these still-eyed Tobey Maguire, hey, don't mind me, she just needed to use the elevator, like, kind of horrible moments. Where there is no expression there, to the point that Sam Raimi just feels it necessary to remove his mask at every given opportunity so you can see him.
For every climax. Yeah. Indeed.
Whereas this, and because Tom Holland did all of that, and even the kind of stuff where they had to motion capture, it's still Tom Holland doing the motion capture. You really got a sense of Spidey's personality through his movement. Perhaps because Tom Holland's a dancer and obviously was in Broadway? What's the English version of Broadway?
The West End.
The West End. He was on the West End doing Billy Elliot. Yeah. And all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that expressiveness really comes through his movement. You didn't need to see his eyes, as Sam Raimi would put it.
His wife works in theatre, by the way. Just
my wife, who sat next to me, who works in theatre, is like, Iain doesn't even know the name of English Broadway. I swear, he just lives in, like, his own virtual version of America. Apologies to any theatre fans out there.
For me, I don't perhaps have the same attachment to Spider-Man as a character. I enjoyed the film. It wasn't as visually interesting. I totally agree that the kind of the expressiveness of the mask was genius and worked brilliantly, but it just didn't seem as stylish as Sam Raimi to me. We were talking earlier before we started recording about the Sam Raimi's horror influences, and I loved, all of those little moments that he brought to it, of which the Doc Ock arms coming alive sequence is
hands down the best. Yeah. When you think about the scenes bereft of that in the first Spider-Man movie, they're actually pretty shit and like kind of static, and like the balloon sequence isn't good. It's not visually dynamic. And it's weird because why after one of the only superhero movies that existed before that really is Batman, and you have that balloon sequence in '89 Batman. Why would you put that in a Spider-Man movie in 2002? Then you've got the fucking continuity errors in that sequence and all that other kind of stuff. That, to be honest, when Sam Raimi's taken out of his element on that first Spider-Man movie, that's when the film fails, frankly,
Okay. But it always had a feeling of, it felt like it existed in a hyper-real world, which I liked.
Yeah, it did. It never felt like it was New York. You know? It always felt like it was existing in some kind of weird, alt universe, which I
guess that's just, personal taste. Maybe this is a moment to talk briefly, tangentially, about spider tropes.
Indeed.
So these kind of ideas of Spider-Man that seem to have existed or perhaps been introduced by Sam Raimi, also existed through the Amazing Spider-Man films, and are now in Spider-Man Homecoming. And maybe they are from the comics themselves. Maybe it is faithfulness to the source material, but maybe you can clarify this. So, for example, that whole kind of cruciform being pulled apart moment that seems to happen in every Spider-Man film. So, like in Homecoming, you had him with the
ferry,
which just mirrored so clearly on the train in
sequence.
Spider-Man 2,
and
then Spider-Man on the bridge with
the two things.
What is it about that moment? Why does that have to be there? Do you think that was a deliberate callback?
Well, John Watts clearly loves Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies. I think it's been enough time since Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies come out that you can make those references in a way that you couldn't in Amazing Spider-Man.
Sure.
So I think, it probably was a deliberate reference.
And I guess another part of it is this whole idea that somehow the entirety of New York is on his side.
Hey, you messed with one of us, you messed with all of us!
From Spider-Man 1. No, I'm not sure if that was so obvious in Homecoming.
You had him kind of like as the Queen's local hero, because it's not like Manhattan, which it is in all of the other movies.
Yeah.
He just sticks in Queens, And so the idea of like these Queens folk going, hey, it's that guy from YouTube! Juxtapose that with the Staten Island Ferry bit where that guy's like, yes, Spider-Man! And then it's like 2 seconds later after Spidey's failed to do it, Iron Man!
I guess that is a bit of a subversion of that. But that was definitely very much still there in Amazing Spider-Man, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I think it had to be. Because unlike Homecoming, because you're doing Spider-Man movies where Spider-Man exists on his own in that universe, Spider-Man has to be everything. You know what I mean? Which is what I loved about Homecoming, is it extricated Spider-Man from being anything other than Spider-Man. In like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man has to be Iron Man, Batman, Spider-Man, everything melded together as one that's going to appeal to a 4-quadrant demographic audience. So he needs to be the guy that saves the city. He needs to be the guy that gets the girl or loses the girl. He needs to be all of those heroes brought together in one kind of sellable package in a red and blue costume that you can sell to kids as toys and stuff. Whereas in Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man could finally, because he didn't have to be the main hero. He could just be the guy that, makes mistakes and fucks up. And frankly, Spidey, in all of the scenes, in all the action sequences, Spider-Man fails to win in Spider-Man Homecoming. When he's about to get the guys in the van, he fails to win because he gets grabbed by the Vulture and dropped from a great height with that lovely Michael Keaton, the Vulture silhouette against the moon. That he fails to win there. He fails to win the Staten Island ferry bit. Obviously, he messes that up. Iron Man has to come in and save his ass, He fails to win.
It's a bit like Batman Year One, isn't it? In terms of seeing him fail, because we've got this idea that he's in training.
But even the final battle against the Vulture, that's not like the moment where he finally wins, you know? It's like he gets his ass kicked by the Vulture and then is so desperately trying to save the guy's life because he knows that his pack's going to explode, which he can't even prevent. He just has to pull him from the rubble. But his victory is a moral one of saving the father of, you know, a girl he kind of likes. But the woman he loves, the girl he kind of likes, you know? So yeah, man. It's kind of beautiful, and you know, you couldn't have that in a Spider-Man movie not in the MCU.
As a segue into talking about Keaton, what about this very pervasive to the extent of feeling possibly forced idea that all of the Spider-Man villains have to have some personal connection with Peter Parker?
They're developing a Spider-Man game for the PS4, and the guys at Insomniac Games keep on saying the best Spider-Man stories are where Peter and Spider-Man's worlds collide.
But that, as far as the movie's concerned, that's every Spider-Man story.
Spider-Man story, yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, Amazing Spider-Man, you've got Doc Connors. I suppose you've got less of a kind of with Electro, although Electro's creating his own little crazy, like, oh yeah, Spidey's my best friend, I got this montage of him. But then obviously
he doesn't
with Harry
know
Osborn,
Peter, though,
no, he doesn't. He doesn't. So that's not, yeah. But obviously Harry Osborn is very much that archetype, that trope.
Doc Ock and Spider-Man 2 and
that's absolutely
Green Goblin and Spider-Man 1.
And the fact that they use that relationship in Spider-Man 2, that's how Peter beats Dr. Octopus. He doesn't physically beat him to death, you know, he reasons with him.
Yeah.
Which again is another wonderful thing about
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man
But then it's this kind of big reveal in Spider-Man Homecoming, which I know you enjoyed.
I loved. Yeah.
I at the time I was like, oh really? And I feel like I've only seen the film once. I possibly need to go back and see if it was telegraphed in a way that I didn't notice.
It was, like, you know when Woodbine Bokeham's character comes to the school looking for the Chitauri energy source that Peter, like, kind of took and stuff. He says, God, can you imagine what the boss would say if he knew we were here? As in at his daughter's school. But of course you just didn't get that. It was only on second watch that I was like, oh my God, they told you. And, you know, the fact that, you know, at the beginning he's showing his daughter's artwork to the Tinkerer going, you know, I used to draw cowboys and Indians. Native Americans, actually, boss. And all that stuff. He's like, yeah, but it's pretty good. So that's actually Liz's drawing of the Avengers and stuff. So, he kind of, and, you know, the fact that he talks about his family kind of constantly and, you know... But I think it was Mark Bernardin who said it's kind of like diversity as subversion, you know, because you don't think of Liz Allen. If you look at Liz Allen, you wouldn't think of her dad being Michael Keaton necessarily, but then she is a mixed race lad, which I didn't really think of, to be honest. That wasn't something which was really on my radar. But for me, it was just a nice kind of reveal, and I was like, oh my God. And it just worked, and for me it worked within the context of the movie. And going back and watching it a second time, they did drop, but not in a way so obvious.
Okay, so let's talk about Keaton then. We love Keaton.
Who doesn't love Keaton? What kind of monster wouldn't love Michael Keaton? Loved him since I saw him in like Beetlejuice or The Dream Team.
Yeah. That must have been like 9 when Batman 89 came out. I love him in Much Ado About Nothing. Have you seen the Shakespeare with...
Is that the one with Keanu Reeves?
Yeah, he's terrible at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Michael Keaton as the comedic sheriff, just existing like he's in a completely different movie from everybody else.
Yeah.
Just hamming it up something incredible. But it works, you know, he's just brilliant. So yeah, he's got bags of personality and obviously he brings that to the role. And do you think he was kind of well developed as a character in his own right?
It's hard to say. I mean, obviously, you have that opening sequence where, you know, he's just a working Joe, you know?
He's a working Joe,
He's the Bruce Springsteen of Marvel villains, you know what I mean?
I was heartened by the fact that they didn't kill him.
Yeah,
I think that's a massive mistake that Marvel makes with its villains. One of the reasons why Loki's been successful is because he's had a life beyond one movie. And, like, then you can do more things with him. So I was delighted that they didn't kill him off. And that, as you said, like, the saving him became the moral victory.
Yeah. I don't think he was necessarily well developed. I think he was developed enough that it had emotional resonance when the reveal was made with, you know, kind of like that. And I like the idea that he would do anything for his family. Like, even with Pete, where he could have, you know. But that scene in the car where he does say to Pete...
I think the scene in the car is brilliant, and for me it was very...
Good old Spider-Man.
It was evocative of that you want to get nuts scene from Batman.
Let's get nuts! man, it was! And I love the kind of conclusion to it, where he's like, I just saved your life, now what'd you say? And Pete rather sheepishly goes, you know, because he's intimidated in that situation, and he's like, Thank you. And then he said, yeah, now get out of here. And then Pete leaves the car, and then all of a sudden you just see the rage build up in Pete and the, kind of like, I've got to stop this and all that kind of stuff before he then goes in, sorry, you don't deserve this to Liz, and then runs out and gets his homemade costume. And I suppose Woodbine Bocum must have been like really near the school when Keaton phoned him. Yeah, man, you're going to need to get down to this school just in case this Peter Parker kid tries to, come out and bust me. Yeah, that's the but. Yeah. Oh, you're literally. Why are you just outside my door at school, dude? They're having a homecoming dance. That seems a bit weird. But luckily he was there, dressed in his full shocker gear, ready to punch Pete in the face as he left the door. Dubious.
One brief thing then, just to go back to talking about Jennifer Connelly as his AI.
Voiced by Jennifer Connelly.
Yes, absolutely.
The wife of Paul Bettany, who obviously was, Jarvis and is now the Vision. Yeah, we were talking about the metatextual elements of Spider-Man Homecoming, and that's just another one,
I thought she did a great voice acting job. She was awesome. She brought such warmth and personality to that in a really kind of vibrant way.
Hey, Suit Lady!
And I enjoyed their interaction with Peter Parker and, Hey Suit Lady and all that stuff. But I did think it was a departure from the character of Spider-Man.
In a sense it was. In another sense, because you think so much of Spider-Man. When I think of Spider-Man, I think of Spider-Man on the, say, like in the first ever Sinister Six comic, which Stan Lee and Steve Ditko wrote. They took the time out of that to have Spider-Man basically voicing his own insecurities on a rooftop with his mask off. Oh God, am I doing the right thing? Oh, I'm messing up my life at school. So you can't really have him saying this stuff aloud unless he looks like a nutter. So
I suppose the Tobey Maguire thing is to have a voiceover.
Yeah. But to actually give him something to react
Yeah, maybe you're right, actually. I hadn't
that
thought about it like
classic
that.
Spidey internal monologue and his own conflicts about what's going on that you see in the comics all the time. And to actually be able to give that a forum, I think it's a wonderfully cinematic adaptation of what we love about the comics.
When you put it like that, it's quite clever. But it still takes away from the kind of the solitude and the loneliness of Spider-Man.
Yeah, I suppose by giving him somebody to confide in. But he's confiding in a, AI. She's not real. She's not going to do anything for him, I do like the bit as well where he's asking her to review the evening's events of when he first met, kind of Prowler and all that stuff. It's the baby monitor protocol or what have you. And he's like, rewind to the last Friday. And then he stood in front of the mirror with his mask on going, hey everybody, I'm Thor. He's like, that was me just joking.
Okay, right. Well, that probably just about brings us to the end of part 2 of our review of the year 2017.
Indeed.
If you've listened this far, what's wrong with you? And thank you. And let us know in the comments where we've been mistaken and grievous errors that have been made. And hopefully see you for part 3.
Indeed. See you on part 3, kids.